Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Best of the West, the place for all things LTA North and LEC. I'm your host, Shadows, and we're jumping straight into things with LEC because today we're saving the best for last. So let's start off with LEC because their regular season just wrapped up, and it hasn't over here in the LTA North. Our playoffs are obviously different because our playoffs are cross-conference, but we're going to get into that in the next episode in 2 weeks' time. Because I don't know if you guys know anything about it, but I have no clue what the cross-conference format is going to look like. But we're going to talk about that at another time. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So starting things off, the regular season standings for LEC are Fnatic at 8-1. Then we have Carmine Core, Movistar Koi, then G2 Esports. They're technically all tied in terms of record because they're all at 6-3. But I guess we're just using head-to-head to determine these. So that means G2 is at the bottom. Since they lost to KC in week 1. And I guess they must have lost to Koi, too. But yeah, that's 2, 3, and 4. Then we have Giant X at 5 with 5 and 4. Vitality is right below them, also at 5 and 4. Then we have BDS at 7th, 4 and 5. And Team Heretics, the last team to make it to playoffs. And obviously we have 2 teams at 1 and 8. With SK and Rogue. I was considering that having to be a highlighted match, but I actually found another game to actually talk about, but I'll get to that in a second. So in terms of thoughts, in terms of my opinion, I feel like Giant X has kind of fallen off. They had obviously a really good week 1, but they don't look nearly as good as I expected them to look. They did manage to beat BDS, and that was a crazy game. But yeah, they just don't look as good. And actually, it's funny I mentioned their match because I feel like you could say similar things about BDS, but that's a much harder case to make just based on how they played in week 3. But yeah, conversely, though, let's talk about the other side of that. The elephant in the room, G2. Obviously, everyone was really worried about them after week 1, but they've been 5-1 in weeks 2 and 3. They've been looking a lot better. They've clearly ramped up. And aside from that, it looks like Fnatic is clearly the best team in the LEC. And it makes sense that they are 2 games above KC because based on how their match went, that was a very, very definitive game. The hype matchups, or the matchups that I wanted to focus on, the hype ones, Fnatic and KC, the hype just did not follow up. Fnatic was dominating since minute 1, basically. Ever since they got first blood, it felt like they were running the game. And the ball was in their court, and, they didn't really drop the ball. But, you know who did drop the ball? Giant X versus BDS, because they almost threw the game. They were so close to throwing the game. I mean, the team, I guess I should say they did throw the game, but, BDS wasn't good enough to capitalize off of that throw, because there was that team fight at 38 minutes. That's enough to throw the game. The ball was in their court, and they most definitely dropped it, unlike Fnatic. Fnatic, they had the ball, they were, dribbling around, and then Giant X had the ball, and they're like, oops, I slipped. So, but thankfully, they were playing versus BDS. Not like Fnatic or G2, a team who can capitalize off of a throw like that. So there was that team fight at 38 minutes, but then there was another team fight 2 minutes later that went in Giant X's favor. And then, yeah. the rest is history, I guess. So BDS versus Giant X was a game, to say the least. Like, what a game. That was actually exciting to watch. The other match that I thought was going to be exciting, aside from Fnatic and KC, was Movistar Koi versus G2, because it's like JoJo versus Caps. There's like history there. But yeah, the game didn't really get to focus on mid. I mean, Caps did play better than JoJo, but there wasn't like very much focus on it since Koi's bot lane collapsed like really early on. So yeah, it was. I mean, I will say Koi did put up a good fight. They did try and look for picks, and they did not roll over and die, which we have seen EU teams do against G2. Obviously, this is a different lineup, but they fought back, but it only did so much, and the Gwen was only so strong. Yeah. So they delayed their inevitable death, but like it only did so much. Anyways, with that, let's take a look at the playoffs bracket. So let me pull that up. We have Fnatic versus Team Heretics, and G2 versus Giant X, and then Koi versus BDS, and then KC versus Team Vitality. So I feel like these are all pretty expected. I think aside from Koi versus BDS, I think we all know who's winning these matches. Fnatic is going to clean Team Heretics. G2 is going to beat Giant X pretty handily. I'm giving Giant X like a 30 to 40% probability of being able to take off a game versus G2. And I also give them a 20 to 30% chance to give them a G2 a run for their money. I do expect it to be a 2-1, honestly, because I do feel like just based on how G2 looks, even though I'm only giving them a 30 to 40% probability, I think there is a good chance that they could somehow manage to get a game, whether that's off of them actually playing it well or like Skewmon throwing or something. Like, I don't know. No shade to Skewmon. Actually, why am I saying no shade when I just implied that he might throw? But yeah, I think we're all on the same page in terms of who's winning those two, and then Vitality taking a shellacking from KC, because that's, I think, all three of those everyone is probably in alignment on. Then there's Koi versus BDS. I think Koi is going to be better than BDS. I think they're going to beat them 2-1. So yeah, I guess let's move on to the top half of the bracket. So we're next after that is the El Clasico, G2 versus Fnatic. Honestly, I don't want to make a prediction because I feel like if I do, I'm going to be wrong. I'm just one of those people that feels like whenever they, are confident or predict a team, they kind of curse them. So I don't want to be that guy. But at the same time, I feel like I can't make one either because I don't know. I just feel like I can't. Because G2 just, improved a lot in between each week, or well, at least week 1 and week 2. I'm not sure how much I leveled up between week 2 and week 3. I didn't really get to watch too many of the games closely this past weekend. But yeah, I mean, they leveled up a lot in between week 1 and 2, so they have 2 weeks going into playoffs, so they could look really good. So, maybe even I am being too generous to Giant X in my previous predictions. Maybe it's like a 30 to 20% chance that they take a game. And even then, maybe G2 will be the one giving them a run for their money. But, G2 has a lot of time to, get their shit together even more. So, I just feel like I can't make a prediction on which direction this BO3 will go because I believe it's a BO3 as well. Doesn't say on LOL Esports, but either way, best of 3, best of 5. I think it's going the full distance. I think we're having all the games, all 3 games, and there's going to be some close contests for objectives or just games in general. And then we have Movistar Koi versus Carmine Corp. That's going to be interesting. If you're French, please do not kill me, but I think Movistar Koi is going to get their revenge. Honestly, that's just my feeling. It's like a Mojo feeling. I feel like I'm being Munch right now, but Munchables, the caster, obviously. I didn't mean that as British slang, because that might mean something in Britbongerland. I don't know. But I just have this gut feeling that they will be the better team on the day. And then we have the bottom side of the bracket, Heretics versus Giant X. And then Vitality versus BDS. For Heretics versus Giant X, I honestly have no clue for some reason. I would have to predict Giant X just because they're the better looking team, but I think there is also a chance that Heretics also just beats them 2-0. Like, which is weird to say, but I have a very strong sense that this match is going to be one-sided. So I think it'll be spicy. I think it'll be fun. Maybe it goes to 3 games, but my expectation is it's 2 games. And then Vitality versus BDS, same goes for them in the sense that it's one-sided. Not in the sense that, like, I don't know who's going to win, because I think we're all predicting BDS. I mean, I'll give them a chance of winning a game Vitality. I'd say, like, 30-35%. But that's a shaky one. I'm not, that's probably the least confident. So it's, like, maybe 35%? Maybe 30%? Like, I don't know. But, yeah, that is what I have predicted so far. And then, we'll get into that once playoffs start. Moving on to the much more interesting region, which is LCS, because this shit is hype. These games are delivering. Holy shit. These best of 3s are delivering. Fearless is delivering. Oh my god. Last weekend was insane. It was just insane. We have to start with the weekend before. We have to start with the other games. So let's start with the less interesting games, which is Lion versus Shopify. Lion is out, and Shopify gets to live another day. It was our first game 3, because, last weekend, it was not like that at all. It was all, I think they were all 2-0s. So we got our first game 3. And it was a fairly close series, actually. I feel like, aside from game 3, it felt very close. Because, obviously, Lion won game 1. And then game 2, Shopify won. But it feel like the game was thrown off of one single fight at Otacon. Which is, they threw at Otacon. And it's here's my thing about Otacon, is, this is not the first time we've seen a Western team just throw the game. Pretty sure that happened in BDS versus Giant X. But, yeah, because I think BDS got Otacon, but it was, at what cost? It's is this just going to be another objective where Western teams throw and, this is another easy turning point for Asian teams to, just fuck us over? We try and fight Otacon or we try and take it and then we just lose a fight immediately after and it was all for nothing. Like, we have been seeing teams throw at Otacon and it's just so stressful. I'm so worried for first strike. I need to breathe. Anyway, yeah. I'm not a fan of Otacon, obviously, because we only see Voracious. We'll get into why we should have seen Ruinous when we get into that later match. But yeah, Game 3 was not as close, but it went to 3 games and it was closer than I expected. Another note I want to make is that Palafox ramped the fuck up. Like, in Game 1, he was not looking good, but in Game 3, he was killing it. Like, he won a 1v2, which is like, sure, you could say certain things about the champions he was playing against, but he looked really good in Game 3. And that was the player that was like, showed up to Worlds. Well, Game 1 was like the one that was bouncing back between Tier 1 and Tier 2. So, yeah. He is a best of 3 player, clearly. Next match. Dignitas versus Disguised. This was a bit of a grudge match. I would say cue the ender clip, but I looked for it and I couldn't find it. If you know what I'm talking about, though, then you know what I'm talking about. Grudge match! Anyway, so Game 1 was a DSG win. They just got off to a good start. And in team fights, they had good ults. Or maybe just Abadage. I feel like Abadage had pretty good public execution ults. There's that one ult in, I think, bot lane where he kind of got himself killed, which was unfortunate. But I feel like his ults were pretty well. And then also, Xe was pretty good with the Daisy. So they won that game. They did, but then Dig showed up and they were like, actually, no, we're the favorites. Let's not forget that. Yeah, Game 2 was just a stomp by Dig because their team fighting was just a whole class above. I mean, this guys did manage to stop that Baron take, but they lost just a few minutes after. So it's like the same thing we were talking about earlier with Movistar Cord versus G2. But it's different. Like, instead of making picks, they're stopping a Baron. But in both games, there's a team just delaying their inevitable death. So it's like they still have fight in them, which is, promising if you're a DSG fan, which I am. I want to see the OTV content creators succeed, but yeah. And then there was Game 3, and this is where we start delivering because, the draft was delivering. We had our first Zeri, our first Blitzcrank, our first Lee Sin. There's a Maokai top. They also had a Ziggs and a Yone, which was something that also happened in SR versus Lion. Shopify Rebellion also had a Ziggs plus Yone comp, which is interesting. I think it's just interesting because I feel like when we see Yone in other regions, we're usually seeing like Rumble top, or Aurora top, or AP junglers like Zyra. But yeah, so the fact that we're choosing AP we're getting our magic damage from our ADC rather than our top or jungle is just interesting to note, because I feel like other regions don't really have that priority. I don't know, I don't watch LCK, so if I am wrong about that, please let me know in the comments below that, yes, actually, Ziggs is very high priority. Ziggs is very high priority in the LCK. So, yeah, let me know in the comments below if I'm sound stupid. But Game 3 was also Dignitas just absolutely dumpstering Disguise. So, yeah, it was unfortunate to see them go. But we'll see them in, April? Right? Yeah, that's a long time. But then we got into the much more hype matches because this shit delivered. 6 full games into the best of 1 qualifier. I mean, TL versus 100 was just so unexpected, but I'm fucking living for it, man. I'm living for it. Like, it went the full 3. And it's only because 100 Thieves is being 100 Thieves. Like, the ball was in their court for game 2. Well, yeah, the ball was in the court. They did kind of throw, but the thing is, like, it doesn't feel like they threw it. It feels more like TL being better in terms of like macro and playing the map and just holistically being a better team or a more well-rounded team. They're a more holistic team because I'm saying holistically. So they're just being more well-rounded. Yeah, I'm fumbling over my words. I don't know if you guys notice. I do that a lot. But yeah, it feels like TL just kind of grabbed that game from the jaws of defeat. Like, and there is a world where it ended in 2 games, but I think we're all glad it went to game 3. So that was just really unexpected, and 100 Thieves were playing out of their mind. That game 1, they came out swinging, and I think during game 2, when they had the lead for not most of the game, but it felt like they had a lead or were somewhat in control for a good amount of game 2. I think even after game 1, we all saw it coming that they could win, but I think game 2 solidified like, oh, holy shit, this team is like actually really good. So it's just crazy how much better they look with FBI. I think FBI and River definitely provide a lot of direction to this team, and I think they're less of a monkey team. Like, they don't just want to... It's less than just monkey fights like it used to be. But it is still, like, the focus on the top side, I would say. Because, Quid and River are just insane, and Quid is insane. But, yeah, Quid was insane that series. His Victor was really good, too, which we did not expect. We all knew, like, he was really good with, Yone and Silas, and, we all know he's really good with those melee champs and, like, those hands diff champs, but his Victor was really good, too. So, yeah, credit to all of 100 Thieves for doing that. C9 versus Fly is a similar thing. I don't have as much to say there, but C9 just, I feel like they just showed up on the day. Yeah. That's really all I have to say. I think it's surprising that FlyQuest lost to Cloud9, because just based on what the preconceptions we had, we all thought, FlyQuest was just in a class above, but clearly not. Clearly the top 4 is a lot closer than we thought, and C9 looks very cohesive. So, yeah. And then I'm not going to talk about the best of 1 because 100 Thieves won that, and I don't really have as much to talk about there. But yeah. Let's move on to our predictions then. I think despite the fact that these teams were upset, I think Team Liquid and FlyQuest are still really good teams, and I think we should expect them to clean house, at least for Fly. I think Fly's going to clean house against Dignitas. I think SR has a better chance against TL, but I think that's also because we know where their weaknesses are. Their weaknesses are more clear, and it starts with a U and ends with an MTI, to say the least. But I do expect them to 2-0 still, since they're still all great players, even though one of them is clearly the wink link. I think APA, Yon, Impact, Core, like, these are all good players, and I expect them to 2-0. I'll give SR like a 40% probability of winning a game. I'm probably being a little too generous, but yeah. And then I expect Fly to be the best of 1 winner for the BO1 tiebreaker. And then those will be our 4 teams. Seed 1 will be 100 Thieves, then Cloud9, then FlyQuest, then Team Liquid. And yeah, I guess based on who they draw, we'll see what happens. That's about it for today. And I will see you guys in maybe 2 weeks or 3. Bye.